Hey, are you taking the March Digital SAT in 2025? Well, if you are, you have come to the right video because I am going to share with you my 10 predictions of question types that are going to show up on this exam. Are you ready? I know I am. My name's Kristina of Ivy Lounge Test Prep, and for the past 15 years, I have helped high schoolers all over the globe, just like you, dramatically raise their SAT and ACT test scores and ultimately get into the colleges of their dreams. So let's start with my first prediction, and it is a math prediction. Are you ready? It's a linear equation question, but this type of linear equation question is going to specifically give you like a word problem or a real life scenario, and it's going to ask you to create the mathematical equation that correctly represents it. Now, a couple things. You're going to need to understand the difference between like a fixed cost or a variable cost and things like that so that you can then determine, well, what's going to be the y-intercept, what's going to be the slope, okay? So let me show you an example of what I mean. Okay, this is a perfect example of the type of question I'm talking about. And the thing is, it doesn't even need to be super hard. You'll probably see easies, mediums, and maybe a hard at this level, okay? So let's read. Sean rents a tent at a cost of $11 per day plus a one-time insurance fee of $10. Which equation represents the total cost C in dollars to rent the tent with insurance for D days? My friends, this is a very straightforward question, right? Anytime we have something that is the rate, and you'll know it's a rate because it's like certain amount per something, like dollars per day, feet per second, things like that, that is probably going to be your slope, right? So here we literally have this $11 per day. That is going to be our slope. The slope is the thing that gets multiplied by the variable. It doesn't just stand on its own. So if we're talking about in D days, it's probably going to be 11D somewhere in here, right? But the next thing, there is a one-time fee, right? Something that it doesn't depend on a variable, a fixed cost, an upfront cost, an initial charge, things like that. We're looking at y-intercepts. So in this case, we've got a one-time fee of $10. So, I mean, this is really straightforward, 11D plus 10. That is going to be your solution. They sometimes can get more complicated. And it's like, after the third day, every day costs $10. Then you need to get a little savvy with translating English per math. But for a lot of them, it's really just as straightforward as this question. So that is my first prediction, is a linear equation question where you have to give the actual equation from a real life example or word problem. Now let's talk my second prediction, and I'm switching things up. I'm now going to alternate math, reading, writing, math, reading, writing. Cool. So the second one is going to be a sentence completion question. I mean, you get these on every test. This should not be a surprise to you, but specifically, I bet you're going to have some sentence completion questions where you'll want to overcomplicate it, but actually, like, what you see is what you get, and your gut instinct was totally right. Like, do not overanalyze. So let me show you an example of a type of sentence completion question you might see that please just take the point in your, 20 seconds. Okay, let me show you. Okay, so here we have one of these sentence completion questions. They always occur at the beginning of the reading, writing modules. Cool. And we don't really need to know what they're asking because we can recognize them from the blank, and they always ask the same thing. It literally is the same words, which, choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase. It's always the same. So let's read our text. And remember, when we read this, we're going to put our own word in the blank just so we're clear on the meaning. So in the early 1800s, the Cherokee scholar Sequoyah created the first script or writing system for an indigenous language in the United States. Because it represented the sounds of spoken Cherokee so accurately, his script was easy to learn and thus quickly achieved blank use. By 1830, over 90% of the Cherokee people could read and write it. So I'm probably going to say like widespread use, like everyone's using it. That's the extent that I want. Like it, by the certain year, like almost everyone's using it. And it was so easy to learn and thus quickly achieved, right? Like easy use, like everyone's using it, something like that. And I look and literally the word widespread, like the word that for me came to my mind first, that was the word. So careful use? Nope. Unintended use? Nope. Infrequent use? No. We need the opposite of infrequent. So this is an example where like literally don't overanalyze. It was what you thought it was. Don't let the SAT make you doubt yourself. Cool. So now on to my third prediction. So we're back to math. So this is going to be a probability question, but I'm pretty sure you're going to get some type of probability question where you're going to need to get the pieces of data to use in your probability fraction by interpreting a chart or graph that you are given. So let me show you an example of what this might look like. Okay, so here is an example question. So the table gives the distribution of votes for a new school mascot and grade level for 80 students. And here we have a little table. It says grade levels are 6th, 7th, 8th, and the total. And then we have various mascots. There's a badger, a lion, a longhorn, and a tiger. And then we've got a total. So this is what we call a two-way table because we've got one variable going left and right, one variable going up and down. So up and down or vertically, we've got the mascot. Horizontally, we have the different grade levels. And at the end, you'll always get your total number of students in the bottom right corner. Just like they said, there are 80 students. We see it right here. So we have to interpret this to then do what they're actually asking us, which is here. So if one of these students is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a student whose vote for new mascot was for a lion? So notice they said a couple things. We need to know, what group are we picking out of? Are we picking out of all the students? Are we picking out only only the eighth graders? Are we picking out of only the people who voted for Lion? Like, what are we picking out of? And then what is the thing we really want, right? So with a probability, it's the thing that we're looking for, the thing that we really want over the total possible that we have to choose from. So in this case, they just said if one of these students, to me, that means out of the total, right? So that means I'm going to have the total, or 80, on the bottom of my probability. Then they said, what is the probability of selecting a student whose vote for new mascot was for a lion? So I'm going to want all the people who voted for lion over the total. So here's my lion, and then here are the total people who voted for lion, 20. So I'm going to want 20 over 80. Now, they're not going to give me that in the answer choices. I'm going to have to simplify. So 20 over 80, very easily, that is 1/4. So let's look for it. Bingo. There we go. Now, quick tip. They might not ask something so straightforward. They might ask you, out of the eighth graders, what's the probability that the person voted for a badger? So when they say out of the, or among the eighth graders, or out of the eighth graders, that means the bottom of your fraction would be the total eighth graders. That would be 31. And then this hypothetical question I made up, the ones who picked badger, you would pick badger eighth. So it'd be 9 out of 31. That's not going to reduce because 31 is prime. So in my hypothetical follow-up question, that one would be 9 out of 31. But for this question, the way they asked it, the answer was 1/4. So that is the third type of question, is a probability question where you're going to have to interpret some sort of two-way table, bar graph, something in order to get your numbers. So hi there, my name is Kristina of IB Lunch Test Prep. If you're just tuning in and never seen me before, I help high schoolers just like you all over the globe get into the colleges of their dreams. And I do this by first helping them dramatically raise their SAT and ACT test scores, and then helping them craft really compelling college application essays. So now I have a question for you, and that is there a certain type of question that you're really hoping you do not see on the digital SAT this coming March 8th, 2025? If there's a certain type that you dread, just tell me. I want to know. Write it in the comments. Who knows? Maybe I might make a future video and include it to show you how to do it. So do that. And then while you're at it, go ahead and just like this video and also subscribe to my channel. And then that way, every week when I give you the latest in SAT, ACT, or the college process, then you're the first to know. So the fourth prediction I have is going to be a traditional reading comprehension question, but specifically, it's going to be a detail question. And you'll know it's a detail question because it will start with, according to the text, comma, and then it'll ask you something. It might say, what is true about blank? Or it might say, according to the text, and then ask you something super specific, like the 5 stages of the implosion of the star were, right? So it'll be like that in that format. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so when you get to these traditional reading comp questions, which come after the sentence completions, you're going to want to read the question stem first because they're all different. So according to the text, ding, 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 what is true about Eleanor? So I'm literally looking for something that is true based on what I'm about to read now. So yes, I do need to read the blurb. So the following text is from Jane Austen's 1811 novel, Sense and Sensibility. Eleanor lives with her younger sisters and her mother, Mrs. Dashwood. Here's the actual text. Eleanor, the eldest daughter, whose advice was so effectual, possessed a strength of understanding and coolness of judgment, which qualified her, though only 19, to be the counselor of her mother, and enabled her frequently to counteract, to the advantage of them all, that eagerness of mind in Mrs. Dashwood which must generally have led to imprudence. She had an excellent heart, her disposition was affectionate, and her feelings were strong, but she knew how to govern them. It was a knowledge which her mother had yet to learn, and which one of her sisters had resolved never to be taught. So what is true of her? There could be many things true of her. I need to look at my answer choices to understand like what they're going for here. So, but overall, I'm getting the sense that she's, I don't know, apparently she is calm, cool, collected, rational, in ways like her mother and her sister are not. That might be what's going on, but let's see which options they actually give us. Eleanor often argues with her mother, but fails to change her mind. Actually, no, I literally said that it enabled her to frequently counteract. Counteract means oppose her mother. So actually, I found proof of the opposite. So not A. Eleanor can be overly sensitive with regard to family matters. No, everything is like coolness of judgment. It's not being overly sensitive. I think there was even something here. Her feelings were strong, but she knew how to govern them. She could control her feelings. So I don't think she's getting overly sensitive. I'm not seeing any proof of that in here. Eleanor thinks her mother is a bad role model. Okay, I feel like many of you might be tempted to pick this one. It's clear she apparently has maybe like she's more on top of it and more rational than her mother. And maybe in certain scenarios, you might make a leap in judgment that like, oh, well, if I were in that situation, I would consider my mom to be a bad role model. But we have to look at what's actually said in the text. Does she say anywhere that she actually thinks her mom is a bad role model? I don't see that anywhere. It's too much of a leap. Okay. Let me go to D, which I really hope is it because I don't like the other 3. And that is she's remarkably mature for her age. That absolutely. She's literally, it's talking about possess the strength of understanding. Everyone listens to her advice, though only 19. So this is beyond her years. So does that make sense? So literally, when you're answering these detail questions, it has to actually be in the text. You cannot be making logical or not so logical leaps, okay? And if you find anything that counteracts or goes against one of the answer choices, guess what? You cross out that answer choice or cross it out on your scratch sheet of paper. So that, my friends, is the 4th prediction. That would be a detail reading comprehension question. Okay, so the next prediction is a math prediction, and I bet you will see a function question, but specifically a transformation of function question. Like you're going to get not a graph of a function, but it'll be an equation of a function. And it'll probably have a polynomial in it. And you might have to do some legwork. Like maybe they give it to you in factor form and you have to actually FOIL it out, right? And then you make whatever transformation they're asking you to make, like literally by changing up the equation itself. And then you can answer the question, okay? So this is like an advanced math kind of topic, mixing functions with like, say, polynomials and algebra 2 concepts. Let me show you an example so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's look at this question. It says, function f is defined by f of x equals, in parentheses, x minus 6 times the quantity x minus 2 times the quantity x plus 6. So it's going to end up being a cubic function, but it's a polynomial, and they have given it to me in factored form. So in the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x, different function, right, is the result of translating the graph of y equals f of x, that means this function, up 4 units. What is the value of g of 0? I have 3 tasks here. First thing is I'm going to need to actually FOIL all of these, right? There's easier and harder ways to do it. The harder way would be to just go in order and FOIL the first parentheses with the second parentheses. I'm going to then get a trinomial. Then multiply that by the last parentheses. And now I'm going to make sure I have to add like terms, okay? The easier way, and it's only because I recognize that this first parentheses, x minus 6, and this last parentheses, x plus 6, makes a perfect difference of squares set. So I know if I did those first, I know what that is. It's x squared minus 36. The beautiful thing is that's just 2 terms. So then I can FOIL that with the x minus 2, whatever. It just makes it a little easier. You don't have to do it that way. You could have done it the first way. I like to save time where I can, okay? So that's the first thing, is you're going to FOIL all of them out and figure out what your giant polynomial is. The next step is they're asking you to move it up 4 units. I'm being asked to translate this function, okay? So when I move a function up or down, that's vertical. That deals with all things y value, right? So that literally means like if they want me to like lower something by 3 units, great. Subtract 3, literally minus 3 in the equation. If they ask me to raise something up by 4 units, literally what they're asking me here, awesome. I take what I have and I literally say plus 4. So I'm going to be able to, add that to the appropriate term in my polynomial. And now I've got my new polynomial of g of x. So now that I have what g of x is, now I can do what they're asking. They're asking me to plug in 0 for the x value and figure out what your answer is, right? So that's all I have to do. So that is an example of one of these transformation of function questions where you're probably going to have to deal with some polynomials or some quadratics or, algebra 2 type stuff. The 6th prediction that I have for you for the March 8th, 2025 digital SAT is going to be another reading comprehension question, but it's going to ask you about the structure of the text. Okay, so remember, for traditional reading comp questions, you're going to read the question stem first because they all ask different things. So this one says, which choice best describes the overall structure of the text? Now we actually read the text, understanding that we're not going to be so hung up on the details. We're kind of looking at the global direction that the text takes. Okay. Musician Joni Mitchell, who is also a painter, uses images she creates for her album covers to emphasize ideas expressed in her music. For the cover of her album Turbulent Indigo in 1994, Mitchell painted a striking self-portrait that closely resembles Vincent van Gogh's Self-Portrait with Bandaged Ear from 1889. The image calls attention to the album's title song, in which Mitchell sings about the legacy of the post-impressionist painter. In that song, Mitchell also hints that she feels a strong artistic connection to Van Gogh, an idea that is reinforced by her imagery on the cover. Cool. So the structure of this means don't get too hung up on words about like Van Gogh, ear, painting. It's got to be something like there was a general idea, and then we had an example that illustrated the main idea. It's got to be vague terms like that. So don't get put off if you don't see exact words from the text in the answer choices. Okay. So let's look at them. It presents a claim about Mitchell, then gives an example supporting that claim. That's like literally what I said, but that is what we're talking about, right? She's a painter, and literally this first sentence says she creates her own album cover to emphasize ideas expressed in music. It then goes into detail about one specific one and the meaning of it. So that one's pretty darn good. I like it. I need to read the rest to see if something's better. It discusses Van Gogh's influence on Mitchell, then considers Mitchell's influence on other artists. First of all, I don't see this part anywhere. I don't see her considering, I don't see this text considering how Mitchell influenced other artists. And also, yeah, it does talk about how Van Gogh, well, it discussed that he did influence her, but it doesn't like discuss like how. And also remember what I said, these sort of structure questions, we don't want to get too hung up on the details of it. So the fact that it's specifically talking about Van Gogh makes me want to double check it. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to go with B. Let's look at C. It describes a similarity between two artists and notes a difference between them. I like how vague it is, right? But are we just talking about the similarity between Mitchell and Van Gogh and then notes one difference? Well, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, and what are the similarities? I don't know. She just really resonates with him. It doesn't necessarily walk us through how they're alike. So that one doesn't really fit the bill. And let's go here. Let's finally look at D. It describes the songs on Turbulent Indigo, then explains how they relate to the album's cover. Does it really describe the songs, or does it mention a single song? And is the whole point about what all the songs are about? Or is the whole point that she creates her own album art that has to do with the contents of the album? Right? So there's some bits that are wrong about this. So A is going to be our best option here. And notice how vague it is. So don't get put off on that. So again, that is my sixth prediction, which is going to be about a structure of the text question in the reading writing module. The seventh prediction that I have for you is going to be a rate conversion question, but specifically where you're converting between different units. Now, the cool thing about these is if you remember from chemistry class and dealing with like moles and things, you actually get to use the units themselves to help you solve the question for you. So let me show you an example of what I mean. Okay, so check out this question. What length in centimeters? And notice they underline it. When they underline a unit, that probably means that's not the unit you were given and you will have to convert. Little tip I've noticed. So what length in centimeters is equivalent to a length of 51 meters? And they were so kind. They gave you the conversion right here. 1 meters equals 100 centimeters. So this is how I would go about this. So this 1 meters equals 100 centimeters. You can either think of that as like a unit rate of 1 meter over 100 centimeters, right? Because each are equal. So if I multiply something by that, well, I'm multiplying by 1, right? Because if the numerator and the denominator are the same, then the thing has a value of 1. So I can multiply by 1 meter over 100 centimeters, or I could multiply by a factor of 100 centimeters over 1 meter. So now here's the deal. What unit do I ultimately want to be in? Whatever that is, that needs to be in the numerator. Whatever unit I no longer want to be in, I need to have it to where it's in the denominator somewhere so I can cancel out that unit with what I have. So I am given 51 meters, right? I'm given 51 meters. So as a number just by itself, it's naturally in the numerator in essence, because it's not even in a fraction. It's just 51 meters. So by default, that is a numerator. I need to have it to where meters is in the denominator to cancel out the meter in 51. What that means is the centimeters needs to now be in the numerator of the fraction I multiply it by. So basically, I am taking 51 meters, I am multiplying it by 100 centimeters over 1 meter. My meters cancel out. I have 51 times 100. That is 5,100. Easy peasy. It's C. And that, my friends, is the 7th question type that you're likely to see, a rates conversion question. So the 8th question type that I know you're going to see, because frankly, you see it on every single digital SAT that there ever was in both modules, it's going to be a claims question. We always have claim questions, right? Like what's new? But specifically that supports the author's claim. It might not necessarily be worded like that. It might be you're supporting the scientist's hypothesis or so-and-so's argument or the student's assertion, but they all kind of mean the same thing. You get what we're going for here. So let me show you an example of what I mean. Okay, so just like with reading comp questions, once we get to the next question block, which are claims questions, I want to read the question stem first because they're asking different things every time. So which finding, if true, would most strongly support the scholar's claim? Cool, I'm supporting a claims. So I'm going to read this. My first task is that I want to figure out, well, like, what is the scholar's claim? And once I figure that out, then I look to the answer choices to see what kind of supports it or what goes with it, okay? The novelist Toni Morrison was the first Black woman to work as an editor at the publishing company Random House from 1967 to 1983. A scholar asserts, here it is, that one of Morrison's likely aims during her time as an editor was to strengthen the presence of Black writers on the list of Random House's published authors. Cool. So basically, the claim here, right, the scholar's assertion is that Toni Morrison was using her, newfound position of power in the publishing world to help lift up other Black writers and hopefully get more of them, because it literally says strengthen the presence of Black writers. So I imagine help publish more Black writers. Okay. So let's look at these and let's see which one might go along with that idea. So the percentage of authors published by Random House who were Black rose in the early 70s and stabilized throughout the decade. Well, yeah, I mean, they rose. Let me just make sure the time was right, though. So she was there from 67 to 83. So she was there all during the 70s. So that would make sense. Like she got more, Black authors to be published. That'd be awesome. Okay, so that's looking good. Let me just check B, C, and D to make sure they're not better, okay? So Black authors who were interviewed in the 1980s and 90s were highly likely to cite Toni Morrison's novels as a principal influence on their work. Well, I mean, that's great, but that doesn't have to say, that doesn't necessarily mean more of them were writing themselves and submitting things to be published and getting published. So that doesn't quite hit the mark of what we want. Let's go to C. So the novels written by Toni Morrison that were published after 1983 sold significantly more copies and received wider critical acclaim than the novels she wrote that were published before. Well, basically that's saying that after she stopped being a publisher, her novels were more popular than the ones she published before 1983. That has nothing to do with getting more Black authors published. That's just about her. Okay, so I don't love that one. Now let's go to D. Works that were edited by Toni Morrison during her time at Random House displayed stylistic characteristics that distinguished them from works that were not edited by Morrison. Well, that's just saying that she had a specific editing style, right? But that doesn't have to do with more Black authors getting published. The only one who talks about that is A. So that is going to be the 8th prediction, and that is going to be a claims question that specifically asks you to support the claim or assertion. So my last math prediction. So prediction number 9, this is going to be a rational expressions question, right? Rational expressions just means that rational means it's a fraction. Expression means it's like polynomials and variables and things, in which you need to say add or subtract different of these rational expressions, but they have different denominators. So you're going to have to be, using all of your skills with like factoring and foiling and whatnot with polynomials in order to make them have like denominators so you can then add or subtract them. So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, so this one is, which expression is equivalent to, and then we have the first fraction, y plus 12 over x minus 8, and then plus y times the quantity x minus 8 over x squared y minus 8xy. So look, there are two fractions. If I had 1/3 plus 2/4, those also have unlike denominators. I have to come up with the least common denominator, right, for them so that I can then convert the fractions so that I can then add or subtract them. It doesn't matter that they're variables here. I have to do the same thing. It's just a little more tedious. So I'm looking at my denominator. I've got x minus 8. And then over here, I have x squared y minus 8xy. Can I factor anything out of this? Like, this is the first step. Is there anything I can do to, maybe factor it out? And I'm looking, I have an xy in this term and in this term. So I could factor that out. When I do, you will probably not be surprised to find that it's xy times x minus 8, which is what I have over here. So they actually have one factor in common. It's just that this rational expression on the right has another factor in its denominator. Cool. So I just need to multiply this left fraction by that other factor on the top and on the bottom to convert it so they have the same denominators. Basically, I'm going to have to multiply this left fraction by xy over xy. Once I do that, right, then I can now add the numerators together of my transformed fractions. And then obviously I'm going to need to simplify them. Who knows, maybe there are like terms I could add. Maybe I could factor things out. Maybe they cancel. And then I will arrive at my answer. So that, my friends, is the 9th prediction, which are rational expression questions where you have to manipulate your polynomials and factor things and simplify things so that you can have a common denominator and then add or subtract your rational expressions, your fractions that have unlike denominators. And the 10th prediction that I have for you is going to be a reading writing prediction, and it's specifically a standard English convention, aka grammar question, that's going to ask you about verb form and tense. So you're going to need to understand, like, well, what form of the verb do I need to make this a complete sentence? But also, what tense of the verb do I need? And maybe you even need to deal with, does it agree with the subject that is somewhere in the clause or the sentence? So let me show you a quick example. Okay, so I know it's a grammar question because I literally see the words standard English and they are capitalized. So I go and I read this, and it says, a member of the Cherokee Nation, Mary Golda Ross is renowned for her contributions to NASA's Planetary Flight Handbook, which blank detailed mathematical guidance for missions to Mars and Venus. Okay, so let me just start plugging things in, which provided, well, yeah, I need an actual conjugated verb here, right? Because this is going to be a complete sentence, and then the comma which. So this right here, starting with which, is now a dependent clause. It's adding extra information, but I need an active verb here, right? Because this Planetary Flight Handbook did something. I like provided. Let me just make sure that it's in the correct tense because provided is past tense. Let me check with the rest of the sentence. Am I using past, present, or future tense verbs? So, okay, is renowned past for her contribution? Yeah. She's known. So this is a past tense thing. So of this book, which provided detailed mathematics. Yeah, I like it. So far that's good. Let's look at B, which having provided, what? That just doesn't work. Which to provide detailed mathematical. No, I don't want the infinitive here. I want an actual conjugated verb. Which providing detailed mathematical guidance. No, I don't want the gerund form because this is really a noun in disguise. So I just want the simple one. I would have wanted provided or provides. Uh, they only gave me one of those options. So here we go. So the answer choice in this one is going to be A. So that, my friends, is the 10th prediction, which is a standard English convention question that specifically is asking you about like verb form, verb tense, or even subject verb agreement. So I go further into detail about how to raise your digital SAT reading and writing score in my free webinar called The 3 Biggest Mistakes to Avoid on the Digital SATs Reading and Writing section and How to Fix Them. So find them out in the link below, and I wish you the best of luck on the March 8th, 2025 Digital SAT. Let me know how it goes.